Welcome back, everyone, to the Electric Coaches channel. And all this month, I've been working on a new aspect of the hobby. Well, it's new for me. And I've been sculpting figures. Yes, I've actually tried sculpting. Normally I would tweak or just paint a figure as is and go with that. And today in this video, I'm going to share with you my experience that I had with sculpting a figure. And this figure you see right here on my practice board is a potential Philadelphia Eagle figure. This is a game day figure, by the way, and I used some modeling clay to bring out the shoulders and the back, and I was able to create enough space where I can have a neck on this figure. Also, I brought out the chest area, so I've made room for my decals when I apply them. Now, a typical figure out the bag is it can accommodate the decals you put on it, but when you use this modeling clay like I did on this figure here, it gives you a little bit more play when you decal your figures. You know, for example, you know, the shoulder emblems, you know, you would normally apply. You got space there, and then on the top of the shoulder you got the room for your shoulder numbers. You know, and it's especially good for, you know, if the team has stripes on their sleeves. So we're going to go over to the workbench, and I'm going to show you the tools I used, the clay products that I used, and just work with the figure. Let me get in position here, and we'll be right back with the start of how I sculpted one of my electric football figures. We're back, and now we're at the workbench where the magic happens. And as you can see, I have scraps, figure scraps. I got you know, pieces of cut up bases. I got figures that I was testing with here. But right here is where I was doing all of my my sculpting and my painting. Okay, and you see here I have a few of game day figures. Here's one of the figures new. When it comes out of the pack, it's on a sprue, and it comes with the arms separated from the body of the figure. Okay, this is a running back pose also, but it can be used for other positions as well, depending on how you configure it. And I have here a figure that I started sculpting a while ago, and I deliberately left it, you know, undone for the sake of this video. I put some primer on the clay because I'll show you later, but when the clay sits and dries, it'll crack, and if you don't tend to it, the clay will come off the figure, and I'll talk about that later in the video. And the figure that we're going to work with, the one that we're going to customize with our clay, is this pose here. This is the same pose that my Philadelphia Eagle figure is. Okay, this guy right here used to look like this guy, and if we put them side by side, let's see if I can get the right angle here, get my hands together. If you look closely, you can see the difference in the the sizing of the figure after the clay has been put on the eagle figure. You see, the back is a little broader and the shoulders are broader. Another reason why I want to use this figure, not only because it was the same pose as that eagle figure you had seen earlier. I want to use this pose because this figure, I had used it before. As you can see, I cut holes in it. I drilled holes in it already for the arms. And I changed my mind as to the type of figure I wanted it to be. I think I want to make this figure a defensive back. I'm going to use these outstretched arms right here to make this figure a defensive back. Okay? But we're not there yet. What we want to do, we're going to start prepping this figure for the clay that we're going to use. Okay? So now, before we start cutting up the figure and, sanding it down, I want to talk to you about the materials that I used. I'm going to get to the good part in a moment once I'm done doing that. I have here a small pail of water. I have some other hobby tools here. This is a small knife. No, it's not sharp. It's used for sculpting clays. I have another tool here that's used. I use it to help me shape the shoulder area of the figure. Okay, and it's got another end on it. It's like a poker, or there's an indented part here where you probably can add some texture to your clay. I have a paintbrush I use for laying water on the clay as it dries, because when you're handling these clays on these small figures, it's a small amount of clay, so the air, once the clay hits the air, it starts drying, but not too fast. We'll talk about that as I go into the figure. And here's another tool that I use. It's kind of like a scooper, a scraper. I use it to help shape the rounded areas of the shoulder, as well as to smooth the areas throughout the figure, to take out some of the lumps that will help with the sanding process. Okay, and I have a small hand saw. I use this saw to remove the head of the figure. Yes, we're going to take the head of the figure off. I have here a figure that I applied clay to. I had shown this figure on Facebook. I believe it was probably about a month ago. Maybe not a month, maybe a few weeks ago. And as you can see, the figure has no head. This is a Reginald Rutledge figure. This is one of his older figures from his figure line. Reginald Rutledge's figure line. By the way, he's no longer going to be selling those figures. But that's another story. And now those are the tools. Oh, and one more tool. I got most importantly, you're gonna need a Dremel tool. And here, this is the drill bit. It's the drill bit. Okay. And as you can see, I got a little bit of plastic residuals on there from our previous jobs that I was doing, previous customizing I was doing. It also has a sander and buffer and other heads you can apply to the tool to help you do your work. Now, the figure that you have seen also on Facebook, and this figure here, right? This figure, I'm very proud of it. It was done with this clay that I found online. It's a self-hardening clay, and it's gray. This is a 4-pound package, non-toxic. Use it right out the bag. Okay. Kids can handle this. It doesn't have a smell, and you keep it in the plastic, and that's what keeps it soft. So I took a small amount of this, and I started applying it to the figure. This clay, it lays down really good. When it dries, you have to really nurse it, because if you let it sit like overnight, like I said earlier, this clay will crack, and when you go to handle it, it'll start to break off. So when you apply this clay to your figure, you wanna stay with that figure for about an hour. So if you got some other things you're doing with your electric football team, like tweaking a base or whatever, while the clay is drying, you can go tweak or paint another figure, and say about maybe like 30 minutes or so, this clay it'll start to set. It'll become the consistency of a brownie almost. It's like it's soft, yet it's firm, and you can hold it with your hand, and then you can use your tools and start maybe moving it a little bit. Okay, then eventually it'll become hard as a rock, but still brittle. I have another clay that I used on the that first figure you had seen, the Reginald Rutledge figure. This figure right here without the head. This figure, this clay, it's self-drying, non-toxic. Kids can play with it, or you don't want to leave your kid alone, because then they'll smear it all over the wall or get on your carpet. You don't want that. But as far as it being toxic, not a problem. This clay is good too. It dries smoother. It does crack. Let me see if I can get that crack in the camera there. Let me see if you can see it. Yeah, there it is. You see those cracks there? It does crack. But it's not as brittle as, it goes on smoother as the other clay, this clay here. So either clay is good. It just depends on what your preference is. If you were to use these clays for your project, in my opinion, I'd rather use this one better. I'd rather use this one because it goes on kind of like a rubber paste, but it's just that when it dries, you have to police it. You got to really stay on it. So that's it for the tools. We talked about the tools. Yeah, one more tool. Here's a file also I use to whittle down this figure. Yeah, we're gonna to build this figure up. We're going to basically destroy it pretty much to bring that figure out. So I'm going to get in position now to begin the process of sculpting this figure, and I think we're going to get started. Okay, before we start applying the clay to our figure and prepping the figure, we have to be mindful of the amount of weight that the figure is going to take on when we apply that clay. Because if you attend a tournament, or if you intend to participate in a tournament, you have to understand that there are weight restrictions to that tournament. And usually a tournament, its weight restrictions are pretty much set at 4 grams, no heavier. Some tournaments are less. You may have a traditional 3.2 gram tournament, 3.5 gram tournament, but most of the time 4 grams is the maximum. And I have here my scale. Make sure it works. Okay. I want to take the figure and everything that the figure is going to have with it. Of course, the figure itself, the stand, that's the platform the figure stands on, and I want to weigh everything that this figure is going to have. So as it stands, this figure with its arms and stand is at 1.8 grams. I have another stand here. It's a game day stand, and as you can see, the interior of the stand is chiseled out. So this stand may be a little bit lighter, maybe 1/10 of a gram lighter. So, but as it stands right now, this particular figure is 1.8 grams. The figure, the arms, and the stand. Now I have here 4 different types of bases. I have a Tudor base, I have a Buzzball RL base, and I got 2 different types of ITZ bases here. The heaviest of these 4 bases you see is this ITZ gear base, and I'm going to lay that on the scale. So that comes in at 3.2 grams. Okay, so if I intend to add clay to this, no more than 8/10 of a gram of clay can be added to this figure. But I want to stay below that. I really want to stay as below the 4 grams as I can. Okay, so I'm going to take that base off. I'm going to try the ITZ standard base. Okay, lay it on there. That comes in at 2.6 grams. That's good. So that means as it is right now, without shaving the figure down, right, which I'm going to do anyway, 1.4 grams of clay can be added to this figure to customize it. Okay, we're going to take that base off. Let's try the Buzzball base. That's 2.4 grams. Okay, that's even better, even lighter. So let's move that base off back to 1.7. All right, now we're gonna go with the Tudor base. Weigh it. That's 2.5, 1/10 of a gram heavier than that Buzzball base. Oh, and one more thing. Let's go back to the ITZ base. That was at 2.6, right? So we're going to take the a front that you can apply to the ITZ base. We're going to add that also. Drop that in there. A 1/10 of a gram more. That made it 2.7. All right. Okay, I want to try one more thing. I want to take this stand away. Now the figure by itself is at 1.1, and I want to switch it out for this stand. Let's see the difference. 1.6. Like I said, it was 1/10 of a gram lighter. This stand is to that one. So if I wanted to, based on what I have here, I could say, well, I don't want to go with the gear base, because that put with the gear base and this stand puts me at 3 grams exactly. And besides, this base is for me, it's better at an interior alignment. Okay, but I just have it here for the sake of this video, I want to go with this ITZ standard base. That's at 2.5 grams. So I got 1.5 grams of clay to work with to stay within specs. But I want to stay below the 4.0. I don't want to be exactly at 4.0. So if I can get it at like 3.6 or 3.5 if I can, I would do that. Because we still have to add decals also. So let's take this figure off. And I want to look at, remember our eagle figure? This was the figure that was the first sculpt job I had done. And we have it on a ITZ power dial. Okay. Let's zero out our scale. And let's weigh it. So at this point, this figure weighs in at 3.8 grams. That's without the decals. So that's also including the paint. I primed the figure and I applied the paint. So that brought the figure up to 3.8. So our decals, not exactly sure how much those are going to weigh because they're still on the sheet. So when I put the eagle emblem on, I'm going to, when I apply my decals, I'm going to only put on the decals that are essential to making the figure. That being the pant stripes, the helmet emblem, the name strip, and the front and back number, and the shoulder emblems. And I think that will keep me within specs. All right, now I probably won't use this base. If I change it over to the standard ITZ base, that puts the figure at 3.6. So I got a little bit more play in regards to weight. All right, but as it stands right now, I have it on this power base. Okay. So now we've covered the tools and we talked about the weight specifications and the types of bases that we could potentially use for our figure. Guess we can move into now actually starting to prepare our figure. This is another sculpt job I did, by the way. This guy's 2.9. This is a Reginald Rutledge figure. This was an experimental job here, by the way. I had to cut the stand out, and I took the clay off its legs. I clayed the legs up with the shoulders, and it made the figure 4.6 grams. So now it's down 2.9, but that was 4.6 with the base. Okay. So we're going to put our scale away and we're going to get to work here at the table. We'll be right back. Okay, we're ready now to start modifying, preparing our figure for the clay that we're going to add. I have here my hobby saw. And I'm going to use it to remove the head of the figure. See, we want to remove the head because we're going to need this entire top portion to lay down our clay. Also, we want to have a dent in the top of the shoulders so that we can make room for a neck. Okay? You know, traditionally the electric football figure, when it comes out the pack, is head and shoulders. There's no neck. So when we cut this head off, right, we're going to make a place for us to put a neck in. So I basically I cut this head. I don't cut straight across. See, I don't want to cut like that. I want to cut at an angle, like so. I want to do both sides of the neck at an angle. Okay. Now, I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me cut this plastic. Okay. I just want you to see the initial part of this. Cutting at an angle. All right. Table's moving here. So I want to have my hands exposed so you can see the piece and my blade. So I'm starting the process of cutting at an angle. Okay. Let's see if I got some grooves in there. Okay, you see the cut marks. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to finish off this head and I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you the piece with the head removed. I've now removed the head of our game day figure. Here's the head separated from the figure, and if you look, you can see that dimple, that dip right between the shoulders. We're going to build a neck inside there. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do, move my vice grips here. We're going to keep our head. We're going to set this off to the side. Saw. Now we're going to get my file and we're going to shave down. We're going to run this figure along this file to take some of the mass. We'll remove some of the plastic off of this figure, and after we do that, we're going to weigh it and see how much we've decreased the weight, which usually isn't much, but if I can get it at least 1/10 of a gram lighter, that's a help. That's a huge help. So basically, I take the figure and I rub it on my file, taking down, reducing some of the size of this figure. See, we're doing this so that we can put the modeling clay in place of the material that we took away from the figure. And as it stands right now, we're at a place where we can't return now. Once you start cutting and shaving your figure, this figure is pretty much ruined at this point. So we have to go all the way now. And this type of when you talk about customizing a figure, this is for people who really enjoy this hobby. You take pride in being in this game. You like it that much to where you don't mind doing this type of thing to your figures or to your bases, what have you. Okay, so we're gonna keep rubbing, keep shaving it down. Now I could use the Dremel tool to do this, but I prefer to use this file because it's a little bit slower. It's not as fast as the Dremel. Okay. So I can take a moment, and it gives me an opportunity to see my figure, and I can get along with that, with this file, I can get a even pass on the figure. I can put the whole figure on this one place and move it back and forth and get that even sand, if you will, on the figure, on the piece. So I'll do a little bit on the front, get my air duster here. Reach across. Bear with me for a moment. I'm gonna blow out the excess plastic there. Get that clean. You know, because as the plastic builds up in these on the file, it won't file as well as it should. So I want to do a little bit of the chest area. Okay. All right. So now we've basically taken off. Move our camera back a little bit. By rubbing this figure on the file, we've basically reduced the top third of this figure. Okay, like I said before, we've gone to a point of no return now. Got to go all the way now with the customizing of this figure. We're gonna lay that down. We're gonna put our file away, and we're gonna bring our scale back. We're gonna weigh our figure. We're gonna see how much weight we've taken off here. In order for there to be a significant amount of weight loss, you're gonna really have to do a lot of hollowing out and drilling of your figure. Now you're gonna drop the head on there, 1/10 of a gram. Remember, it was 1.7 before we shaved it. So then I got it down to 1.6. So I've basically taken off 1/10 of a gram of weight from this pose. So I have now, how much play do I have now? Okay, that's 2.6, 2.5 grams. So I got 1.5 grams of play with this with the clay I'm going to use, right? 1.6. All right, and if I use this stand, I'll lose 1/10 more, 1.5 grams. Okay, so we're in good shape in regards to the amount of weight that this clay is going to be once we start applying it. So let me prep my area here. We're going to get ready to start applying the clay to the shoulders and the torso area of this figure. We've now filed down the figure. We now have to Dremel the new holes that I intend to use for the arms of the figure. I don't want to use these holes in the front like you saw earlier. This one is kind of it's flat now, but this one here is still kind of deep. We're going to fill those holes with clay. So I'm going to get my Dremel out, get my motor going here, and I want to put these holes on the underside of the shoulder here of the figure. So I want to lay my Dremel tool right about here. All right, so bear with me for a moment while I start drilling this hole. We don't want to stab the figure. We just want to let the Dremel start cutting away plastic. Along with that, doing this, it takes a little bit of the weight off the figure, thus helping it to become lighter for the clay that we're going to put on it. Okay, sometimes the tip of the Dremel, it collects a little bit of plastic, so you may want to take your finger or use your brush here to clear off plastic that may collect on there. So now I have one hole already drilled on the underside, like the armpit area of the figure. Now I want to do the other side. This is where we're going to mount the holes. We're going to mount the arms for our figure. And you want to make sure that we don't dig into that front hole that was initially put on the figure. This plastic is very resilient, so we don't have to worry about it cracking or splitting as I drill these new holes. Okay. And while I'm at it, I want to put my Dremel up around this area here where the neck is going to be. Going to take some material out of there. Going to cut that open a little bit more. And again, it's going to help us with the overall weight of the figure by taking off some of this material. Now, people outside the hobby, they'll look at this and say, "Why are you doing that to your guy? You're tearing him up." And when we're done with him, he's going to be a lean, mean electric football machine. I mean, well, as is, out of the plastic, it's like that. But when we customize, we put our own touch onto a figure. Okay, I dug out some more of the neck, the neck area. So let me go around the back here. Run my tool, my Dremel, across the back area, cut out some of the material there. Okay, we got the holes dug, cut out on the underside of the figure. We got the neck area dremeled out some more. Turn off our tool here. Okay, we're gonna get the air duster. All right, we're gonna blow off excess plastic, because we don't want that mixed in our clay. Okay, nice and clean, nice and dusted. Now we have shavings around here, so you wanna, I have a paintbrush I like to use to sweep up some of this excess plastic shavings. You don't want this around to get mixed in your clay, and you definitely don't want to get it mixed in your paint when you're painting a figure. You want to keep your work area clean of all dust and any shavings. All right, sweep that up. Let's put our dustpan over there. Okay, back to the figure. All of this around one guy at a time. Isn't that special? Okay, now we're gonna go and we're gonna get out our clay. Remember this clay that I had shown you? I had shown you earlier. Again, this is air dry. You don't have to bake it. Just leave it out in the open and it'll dry on its own. Take it out of the pack, take it out of the box, and here it is. You keep it in the plastic. So I'm gonna open it and I get my my knife here and I cut off a small portion of clay. As a matter of fact, while I'm doing that, get my scale out, and I know I could play with 1.4 grams of clay. So that's how it looks. It's like a brownish color, and it dries gray, but really it's kind of like a grayish brown color. So I'm digging out a small portion of it. I'm going to rest that right there. Now, you want to keep the clay covered and keep the bag closed tight. As long as you keep the clay in the plastic, it'll stay soft, it'll stay moist. If your clay does get dry, you can slather some water over it, and that will help it to loosen. Now that little piece of clay you see right there, it's in the air now. It's drying by the seconds. Here it is in my hand. Okay, I'm going to weigh this and see what we got. I'll bring my water over also. Let's weigh this piece of clay. Okay, that piece of clay is 1.1 grams. Very good, very good. I'm going to work with this. I'm going to set that there. Let's move our scale out of the way. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a small piece of it, and I want to dip it. I'm going to dip this clay in the water to help activate it, to help it stick to the figure. Okay? So here I'm going to lay it on the figure like so, using my knife. And in the process, I'm going to fill those holes that you saw in the front. Now basically, I lay the clay on the figure a little at a time. Oh, and by the way, this little piece of clay here, you can take a paper towel, you can wet it, which I'm going to do right now. Let's put this guy on the stand for right now. Paper towel, dip it in some water, right? And we're going to take our clay and we're going to put that clay on this moist paper towel here and cover that up. So, okay, we can keep that moist. Take our knife, dip it in the water a little bit to help keep it moist, and pass it over the shoulder area of this figure. Just move a little bit at a time over. Now remember that that space that we cut for the neck, we're going to dig that out once we get this clay in position. Now, some, sculptors, there's some really great guys out there, some really good sculptors out there. They use epoxy. They use the epoxy resin, and they create molds, and they make some really sharp looking figures. What I'm doing here is all by hand and by eye. You lay this clay on the figure and you move it around until you get it into a place, and you get it into some type of look of a human being, or shoulder pads. Okay, so we go to our napkin where we have our other piece of clay. We're keeping it moist, and we're going to cut off a piece there like we did the first time, right? We're going to cover it back up, keep that moist. I'm going to dip that piece of clay into the water. As a matter of fact, I don't even need all that. Take off a little chip. See, we don't want to build up. We don't want to make the figure overdone. We don't want the figure to look like a booger man, if you will. A long time ago, in my early days in the hobby, I had a friend that would he painted his own figures, and he would slather on all his paint. He would just cake the man up with a lot of paint, and it didn't look good, So, and we don't want to do that with our clay. We want to be as artistic as we can, without overdoing it. We want a modest looking figure, but at the same time, you want the figure to look sharp. So here, I am applying the clay to the figure, filling these holes in the front. This clay is also good for repairs. Now the putty this clay is very soft right now because it's very wet, and as you touch it, it tends to lump up as you touch it. But when it dries, you don't want it to dry all the way, okay? Because you still want to be able to work it. You want it to get to a a damp type of consistency, like the consistency of a brownie almost. And when it's like that, you can really mold it and shape it. Okay, so I'm grabbing another little piece here. Now remember those holes that I cut on the underside of the figure? Right in there. I don't want to put clay in those holes yet. When I mount my arms, that's when I'm going to use I'm going to fill the holes with clay when I mount those arms. So I want to add a little bit more around this area here. I want this guy to be a defensive back, so I might not need to use that entire gram of clay. Gonna wipe some of that off over there, and I want to work with just this little portion here. I want to close off this area right around here, around the shoulder area here. Okay. Dip my knife in the water and just lay a little bit of water on the figure, and I want to shape place this clay in the place where I want it. Okay. And the chest area, just touch it. Now the back, let's move it a little bit closer. Give me a moment. Okay. See the back here? I want to start working this area right here. I want to add a little bit of clay there to close off that space. We want this guy to look as balanced and as even as we can get him. These are the steps I took to make that eagle figure that you saw earlier, and that maybe some of you had seen on Facebook. Okay. Now I want to take my knife here and I want to come down a little bit, taper off the back some. Okay. And I want to do the same thing around the front. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more of clay around this area here to fill out that line. Could push that up some more. Could take my knife and push that up a little bit to create a line, but I want to add a little bit more clay around about in that space in there. So I want to get my my holder, hold the figure, and I want to go here where I got my clay stored in this wet paper towel. I want to take a little bit more off of here, a little crumb, not much, just that little bit right there. Okay, dip that in some water, and I'm going to lay this on the back of the figure. And really, I don't even need that much. Just going to pick that off there, lay that over there on the wet paper towel. I want to start applying it to that area of the figure that I showed you a moment earlier. Take a little bit off and move it over, and just keep building it. Just keep adding it as we need it. Okay. Remember, those holes on the underside, I don't want to put any clay in there yet. I want to monitor the other areas of the shoulders here. Just wet my knife a little bit and just start adding and moving the clay, because it's now beginning to stiffen a little bit. Although it's still soft, I still can move it. Now, in an effort to reduce the amount of sanding I may have to do, all right, I want to try and smooth this clay while I have it in this soft consistency. All right. Also have a small hand file, also a very, very tiny hobby file, like this tool right here, you can use it to have several of them, rounded type files. Help you smooth out the clay. Okay, now I now have the clay, the amount of clay I want on the figure. Let me see, I want to lay that down a little bit more. That was one of the holes in the shoulder. The first holes you saw, that hole right there was kind of exposed. All right, I want to taper off this clay here. Get my knife. Okay. Okay, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Now, remember that tool I showed you? It's the one with the scoop on it, right? I can use that to help me shape the area where the neck is going to be. So I'm going to use it to touch in there like so. That. Dip it in some water to keep it. And then I can use it to touch the back, this open area of the figure, see? Help to smooth out this clay. Now you see the concave portion of it right there, like a spoon almost. I can lay that on the shoulder to help round it. Dip it again. Help round it. Go across the chest a little bit. Open up that neck some more. See that hole? See that space right there? That's where the neck is going to go. See? We don't want it too deep because we don't want the shoulders to go past the ears, the ear hole of the figure. Because if you look at a real football player, their helmet, the ear holes of their helmet are above the shoulders. Okay, so now I got the clay where I want it, and I think I got enough on it. I can't weigh it yet because it's still wet, of course, right? If you see in the video, you can see the sheen. That's the water on it. All right. So we're gonna set that guy right there, and I didn't even use that entire gram of clay. See? Got that right there. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this clay and I'm going to put it away. Put it back inside our plastic and mix it back in with the larger body of material. So I'm gonna take this, right, and put it back right there. Just mix it back in. Okay? Remember, keep it closed off. Got a little bit on my hand. It's non-toxic. It's basically like playing in mud. So again, if your kids got a hold of it, no need to worry. You can breathe it, smell it. It's harmless. Okay? Close this off. Now, I would do the same thing with this clay. All right, I would apply it the same way. But the clay you saw today, it goes on a lot smoother. Now, we don't want this to sit overnight. This clay should be ready to touch probably, I would say, in about maybe an hour, hour and a half. Okay? And once you get it dry, you want to lay your primer, a coat of primer, on that clay. You want to like sand it a little bit, maybe, to get as much of the rough edges off as you can. Okay? Here's the back of the figure. This is the back of another figure. This is the front and the back of another game day figure. You know, once you sand it, get as much of the ridges, as much of the bumps off the figure as you can, without cracking, without breaking your new mold, right? You want to put your primer on it. That way the primer will encapsulate the clay, and it will keep it from falling away from your figure. You see? Now, I'm gonna let this dry, and while it's drying, I'm gonna go over to my practice field. Go over to my practice field, and we're gonna test the base on this completed sculpted figure. We're gonna see how well it runs the base, and how much effect adding the clay onto the figure would affect the base. Also, you gotta make sure the figure has been properly positioned on the stand. So I'm going to adjourn here. We're going to come back later, and I'm going to show you the outcome of this figure once I get it to a place where I think it's ready. I'm Mo. Thanks for watching.